Hi, Kashify. Thanks for the response. I entirely get the sentiment, and I sympathize. And I have seen things that way myself, and I still do see this hubris that the world has. And that's one reason I do think there's such a thing as material spirituality, a need for material spirituality, because humility is a part of that. And that's the thing. I just want to bring some humility into knowledge. I think all the violence and this sort of thing that you're talking about being related to knowledge is part of the hubris and the overly exaggerated pride in thinking that the knowledge is pure somehow. And that's the problem, even philosophically, where people think that knowledge is pure truth. Now, they know they don't have pure truth, but they see it, it's kind of like a recipe. I mean, not that they use this metaphor, but it's as if it's a recipe. And there's sprinkles of pure truth in it. And that's like the sugar, and it sweetens it up. But that's not really how it works, okay? There, as we know, there isn't even sprinkles of literal truth. There are concentrations, though, of demonstrable things. Now, I used to, when I was young, be very much against, my anti-mantra was proof, truth, and rational thought. And the whole time I was very rational. I believed in measuring things and being very careful about how I judged something, okay? But I didn't like it because of all the people that misused those concepts. People that would try to prove something that was really bullshit, and it was a trick, and the proof was sort of sinister. Though I don't like using that particular word. Sinister has some positive connotations as well. But anyway, so with rational thought, you had people like Nazis in the cold, stereotype of an old school scientist, where very rational and people don't matter. And with truth, capital T truth, you have people with all these dogmas. For example, theistical, metaphysical dogmas. Those are the ones that are always upholding the truth and how beautiful this absolute truth is. And I came to dislike Plato because of the same thing, this reverence for this beautiful absolute truth. But I think the final judgment on those issues is that those were all corrupted by this absolute objective perspective on them. I mean, there's nothing wrong with rational thought when you think about taking ratios and comparing two things and seeing how they work based on a goal, a criteria, that's related to some sort of a goal. Truth, same thing. There's rational amounts of truth, when it's more demonstrable rather than less demonstrable. Relative truth, not truth in itself, not judged against anything else. To judge a truth, you need two predictions, and then you see how they go, and that's how you judge the truth of what led you to the prediction. And you never know that absolutely, but that's right. If people had this idea about their knowledge, would they go to war? And that's why proof came down to demonstration. It's like, you can't prove something, but you can demonstrate it to me. And the basic epitome of demonstration is just to do it. You say you can solve this puzzle, here's the puzzle, solve it. I'll believe it when I see it. And maybe they lucked out, maybe they cheated, so you're never quite sure, but you do get more sure. I mean, if I see somebody solve a puzzle 1,000 times under all kinds of limited circumstances, like I make them take it out of the package new, or I somehow get to watch this, compared to somebody that's done it once. Yes, it's more proof rather than less proof. So something can be more rather than less proved. And I just think we have to get this into the language so that that's how people think of the knowledge they have. Because otherwise they'll think, oh yeah, I'm not perfect, nobody's perfect. But they think that the truth in their ideas is coming from this pure perfect part. So they think they can have this muddy, foggy idea, but they're so sure this shining light inside it, it's shining through. The absolute truth that's in there is shining through all the bullshit they wrapped around. And it's like, no, it could be solid bullshit. And if you have a skeptical attitude about knowledge, you have that. Because for one thing, you know that your idea is the very best that they can be. Is really clever reverse engineering of the facts. So there's always reason to look for weird facts, and there's never any shortage of paradoxes and enigmas in science and logic and so on. And you can always are drawn back to those facts to get more information about how your model might be totally wrong. And it's a good process. And we ought to get all of knowledge associated with it. And in terms of the clockmaker, I think it's not really fair to say that the knowledge of a clockmaker, somebody that was, let's just think a classical clockmaker with gears making this fine machinery, this tiny fine machinery, or a watchmaker, they are not that likely to have an absolutist perspective on knowing time perfectly and understanding it perfectly. I mean, they're likely to understand, the sort of physical romance of getting something like this to work and balance just right. I mean, and to think they understood it perfectly, they would have to think that they could make the perfect watch. And however good they were, that would probably not be a particularly healthy attitude. They would have to know their limitations somewhat. Maybe somewhat, watchmakers get pretty damn good. And their stuff looks pretty perfect. But I know people that can do that kind of thing. They know where the imperfections still lie, and that's how they keep improving what they're doing. So I don't think that is character, that kind of feeling about time, making watches, should be characterized in the same way as a metaphysical drawing of absolute truths about time. And even if it were, or to the degree that somebody sees what the watchmaker does and on their own posits, look, we understand time, that again is because of their idea that the knowledge is somehow absolute. The watchmaker demonstrates knowledge, and they think somehow that makes the abstractions they draw from it absolute. And I think this confusion goes along with having all of these terms defined such that real knowledge is this absolute kind you can never have. It's like when you take a fallacy, then you can draw any conclusion from it. We're so mixed up on what we think knowledge works, and I don't think it's acceptable to go, yep, that's how knowledge works, and we'll just be smart enough to realize that machine doesn't work, it identifies nothing in the real world, is totally useless, but we'll keep it there, we'll teach all our kids that this is how knowledge works, and then we'll just try to tell everybody, don't use it. Meanwhile, they see all the knowledge in the world in the practical sense of what people know, getting all kinds of things done, beautiful music written, and space shots to the moon, and marvels of creation that humanity can come up with. So, and we're going to say, but don't actually use this, and then what do we call all that stuff they really are interested in, where people demonstrate their knowledge? No, that's just not going to work. We have to have a setup of epistemology that people in general would have a rough understanding of that would match how they're really thinking. Not even idealized of how they should think. It'd be good enough just for them to understand how they're thinking, how they're drawing conclusions. And that's what I say, it's through these perceptions and whatnot, and the terms like knowledge are all just, they're information processing terms, just to help us be able to communicate with ourselves and others about information processing. We do as these perceptual information processors. And the rain is coming.